Friends, today I'm bringing you an opening that is going to make you win many games. It's super easy to play for starters, and it's also going to bring you incredible results because people don't know how to play against it. That's the most important thing of all. We've seen this opening on the channel before, but today we're going to dive a little deeper. We're talking about the bishop's opening, bishop to c4. Alright, we're used to it, right? Play knight to f3, usually as a first move, huh? To attack this pawn, to keep the initiative. However, bishop to c4 as a first move is, almost never seen in any game. That's why it hides so many secrets. And there are many advantages to not having developed this knight to f3. We're gonna see that next. I brought you a board with coordinates today, so you can follow me even better while I give my explanations. I hope you like this type of board with coordinates. If so, let me know in the comments, since you know I always read them. Alright, how are we going to play when we make the move bishop to c4? Well, the most typical response for black is to play knight to f6. Why? Well, logically, they are developing one of their four minor pieces, and furthermore, and this is the most important thing of all, they are threatening this pawn right here. In other words, it's the only developing move that maintains the initiative, because it forces us to defend the d4 pawn. That is why it is the most used move. How should we defend this pawn? Well, the move we're going to use is d3. Simply put, we have developed our bishop. Now we can play d3 because we are no longer blocking his path. Additionally, we are opening up the path for our other dark squared bishop. Now, I'm going to explain the plans we have in this opening because you're going to play you're gonna like it a lot, even for playing in your tournaments, right? A completely logical move here for black is bishop c5. In fact, players with an ELO under 2000 or under 1800 usually make the same moves, knight f6, bishop c5, as if it were an Italian opening, right? That's why these two moves are the most common. Careful, they are good moves. They are developing naturally. We're going to continue developing this knight here, knight c3. Remember well, when you play this bishop opening, do not develop the knight to f3 for the moment, but rather the knight to c3. Why? Because we usually have two main plans that you have to remember, that you have to keep in mind in this opening. One would be to move f4, okay? If the knight is on f3, we wouldn't be able to make this advance, and the other plan would be the pin with bishop g5. We can use these two plans as it suits us. For example, if they castle directly here, a very good move is bishop g5, pinning this knight on f6. You have no idea how good this move is. By not having developed the knight to f3, we have gained a tempo, since now we are threatening to jump with knight d5, putting a lot of pressure on this knight on f6. This undoubtedly looks extremely dangerous for the black pieces, since they have a hard time defending themselves. That is to say, if this pawn were on d6, they could play the knight from b to d7, but since this pawn is not on d6, they can't come to defend this knight. Therefore, if they play d6, we could immediately jump in with this knight to apply a lot of pressure. If they play knight to d7 afterwards, our plan would be to keep applying pressure, and I'm going to explain that to you now. But first of all, you need to know something that'll give you goosebumps. What happens if they try to kick this bishop out? It seems pretty logical, right? If they kick this bishop out, well, we could play bishop to a4, a very natural move to keep it pinned. However, here we have a wonderful move, the classic fishing pole with h4. In this opening, it works very well. It works very well. Why? Because since we don't have the knight on f3, we have a clear path to attack with the queen. Very good idea. I mean, why, ChessTeacher, are we giving away the bishop? Just so I understand. Well, simply put, if they capture this bishop, so you understand, if they don't capture it, well, the pin remains active and they haven't achieved anything with the move h6. It's as simple as that, right? So what happens if they capture? We recapture with the pawn, a takes g5, and then we are threatening this knight. The knight, which was the true defender of the castle position, not only defends the h7 square, but also defends these two squares, which are the entry points for the queen. In other words, the knight is being threatened, and when it moves, the winning move is queen h5 with a tremendous battery, rook and queen attacking the knight, a knight that will end up dying. And not only that, but we are going to deliver checkmate here regardless. In other words, if they get careless, logically, we deliver mate. But the normal thing is for them to try to escape. They can't escape with this pawn thanks to our bishop. Do you see it? This pawn is pinned. They can try to escape with the rook so that when we capture, they can escape with the king, and then when the queen comes here, keep escaping with the king. So there is a way to finish it very easily. Remember well, when they try to escape with the rook, the only thing you have to do is queen takes queen takes f7. It's important to capture here before the knight, forcing the king to move here now. And the simplest way to finish is by sacrificing our rook for the knight. Rook takes h7, check, forcing the black king to capture. And now, simply, thanks to our bishop. Queen h5 would be checkmate, since the king wouldn't be able to escape behind or in front. It's that simple. e4, e5. We play bishop c4 first, okay? It's important to bring the bishop out first. Knight f6. We defend the pawn with d3, bishop c5, and now knight c3. Remember well, if they castle here, the winning plan is bishop g5. But what happens if they don't castle? Let's say, for example, they play the move d6, one of the moves I encounter most in this position since they've developed the knight and the bishop. Now they want to try to develop their other bishop and their other knight, and the move d6 seems perfect. It defends the central point, clears the way for the light squared bishop, and they can castle on the next move. All of this seems perfect. However, this is when our f4 plan comes in, a very strong plan. Don't worry, if you don't remember the ideas and get terms mixed up, or try to play bishop g5 or things like that, you'll still be doing just fine. This opening is played very comfortably. However, the strongest plan of all here when they play d6, which as you know is a very popular setup for black, is f4, an extremely strong move. What is f4 threaten? Well, the threats here are simple, and in fact, we have two. One would be to capture here, for example, play knight f3 and put a lot of pressure on this pawn right here. Pay close attention here to the great move we have, because we haven't developed our knight yet, because if we had developed this knight, the pawn wouldn't be able to come out, right? With the pawn on f4, we can place the knight behind it, and both pieces are putting a lot of pressure on the e5 square, thus gaining a lot of space. Furthermore, we can capture, castle, and place our rook on this file along with the bishop to exert tremendous pressure with all our pieces on this point. Very well, one threat is this, right? Capturing. Another threat is advancing. In this way, we trap the c8 bishop, which cannot get out beyond d7. And not only that, but we gain a tremendous space advantage on the king side, right? So we have two clear threats. The first would be to capture, and the second to advance. That is why many people decide to capture. But if they capture, they would simply leave us with a tremendous development advantage. We have developed our two bishops to a very good square. After that, we'll play knight f3 and castle, and once again we'll have the rook on a super favorable spot. So here, what is the move I encounter the most when I play f4? Well, the move I encounter the most isn't capturing, or letting themselves be captured or anything like that. The move I encounter the most is knight g4, a move that a priori they always try to play against us. A lot of people attempted to try and pull this typical attack on us, similar to the fried liver, right? Or to the, what's this attack called now? The Fegatello attack, right? Knight f2, attacking the queen and also attacking the rook. What they don't know is that this attack isn't a good attack against the bishop's opening. They'll think we're playing something weird. We haven't developed the knight, we haven't castled, we have a pawn here in a weird spot. They'll think we're doing weird things. But really, the ones playing weirdly are them. They're uncoordinating their pieces. They only have two, and with two, they aren't going to do anything. We continue with the brilliant move f5. Why is it so important? To uncoordinate the opponent's pieces. We don't care if they try to hit us with the fried liver attack, attacking the queen and attacking the rook, because it's already too late here. We have our pieces well coordinated, and the queen and bishop can join the attack, while their pieces can't get in anywhere. Here, we would continue in the following way. They attack our queen and they attack our rook. We will enter with the queen on h5, already too late for our opponent to defend themselves. Thanks to our bishop on c4, very well placed, we are attacking checkmate in 1. It cannot advance because it is pinned. Advancing here would be a huge mistake, because upon capturing, you couldn't recapture with the h-pawn, since the rook is completely pinned. You would have to recapture with the g-pawn, the king would be left completely exposed to the file, and the variation would end up losing. That is why the most common move here, to stop this point, is short castling. A priori, it seems like a good move, right? It defends both points with the king and the rook. However, they're already too late. Unfortunately, there is simply no way to stop the white piece's powerful attack. How shall we continue? Well, the strongest response we have here is the following. We bring one of our remaining pieces into the attack with a gain of tempo, bishop to g5, directly hitting this queen on d8, which practically only has 2 squares, right? Queen to d7 or queen to e8. It really doesn't matter to us where it goes. It makes absolutely no difference to us, because we have a very clear advantage in dynamism. In other words, our pieces, pay attention, okay? Knight, bishop, bishop, and queen are attacking the enemy king. Well, it's true, they can capture our rook, they can do whatever they want. However, we have already won. We now enter with the piece we have left, knight to d5. Many might think we are attacking this point, but no, what we are doing is, for example, it doesn't matter to us what they do. Take a look, okay? They are up a rook and a knight. However, we have so much attack that they can't do anything. The winning move here is a double exclamation mark move. Whenever you want, you can pause the video to try and guess it. I'll give you 3 seconds if you want, so you can practice. And the key move is knight to f6, double exclamation mark. Obviously, this knight must be captured for 2 reasons. It's giving check, it's going to take the queen, and it's going to deliver checkmate. It must be captured no matter what, and once it's captured, there's no direct check. But there is the move bishop takes f6, pinning the enemy king, and simply put, there is no move that stops this check and subsequently the mate on g7. For example, knight d6 attacking the bishop, we don't care. Queen g5 check and queen g7, checkmate. If you are more aggressive players, I recommend that when they play knight f6 attacking this pawn, instead of the one we just mentioned, d3 defending, you enter a very interesting variation that I once mentioned on the channel, although not in such depth. The move is d4. Very, very, very interesting. It's true, we aren't defending this e4 pawn, and they can capture it. But this is a mistake, friends, because after pawn takes pawn, d takes e5, this knight is going to be tricky to get out, huh? This knight is difficult to retreat. For example, these 2 squares are defended by our great pawn on e5. Here it's covered by the bishop, here by the pawn. Here it's not covered by anything, but it would have serious threat problems. I mean, if it tried to retreat now, we could come over here threatening a lot, right? This knight has problems. So the most used move here, according to the database, is bishop c5 again. Very interesting, I won't deny that. They're threatening this 2-point again. Thanks to these videos, you're starting to lose your fear of these types of threats, right? Many of you might be thinking here that you should play, for example, bishop d3, knight a3, right? Trying to defend against this attack from the black pieces. However, many times we simply focus on defending when we actually have advantageous attacking positions. For example, here, I'll give you an example. You could sacrifice the bishop on f7, check, and then come in with the queen and you would recover this knight. Therefore, winning an extra pawn, and not only that, but the opponent's king would also be completely exposed, right? This would be an example of how you could win without defending this point here. However, sometimes there are stronger attacks that don't even require sacrificing pieces. For example, directly, queen to d5. In variations of the Scotch Gambit, those of you who have studied it know that this battery with queen to d5 is extremely strong. We threaten checkmate and we attack the knight. The intermediate move of knight to g5 defending doesn't work, because we would eliminate it and subsequently enter on f7. That is why here the black pieces, for example, must castle. But what happens if they try to castle? We can continue attacking. And how can we continue attacking? Well, for example, we could take this knight here. Very well. You would be surprised to know what the most used move here for the black pieces is. The most used move of all is before castling to capture while giving a check, and that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to show you because I'm sure many of you are thinking about it. Here, when we play Queen d5, instead of castling, they realize they can make this check, right? Because we are threatening checkmate, yes, but if we are given check, we must move the king. But that doesn't worry us, since now we continue to threaten checkmate, and once they move, we can capture this knight, right? What are the black pieces gained? A pawn, but now we are attacking a bishop that undoubtedly must retreat. And not only that, but now we are launching a tremendous attack on the enemy king. First of all, we develop our knight to f3, for example. And as we can see, all the pieces are coordinating to attack the enemy king. For example, here the most used move is c6, preparing two things, the retreat of their bishop, which isn't doing much anymore, and the possible, right? d5 move to open up the position a bit, since we have the king in the center. It makes a lot of sense. However, they don't arrive in time. The winning combination here is the following: bishop d3 in such a way that we threaten checkmate. Often, the threats you make provoke weaknesses in your opponent. They have to weaken themselves with what move? With g6. Logically, here, it wouldn't be possible, for example, 5 to stop the threat, because we would capture in puissance and the threat would remain latent, right? They must play g6. And what does that do? When they have their pawns on light squares, the dark squares are defended by no one. Therefore, the bishop can enter. Many of you might think, bishop a6, a tremendous move. It undoubtedly is, but here we are helping our opponent a little. Much better is bishop g5, threatening the queen. We threaten the queen, and not only that, but here we practically have the game won with the next move, bishop f6. All of this is starting to sound familiar, right? After the move d5, which is the most used, we bring the queen into the attack. I'm going through all of this so that you understand how you can win, because if I just show you the 3 opening moves, afterwards you won't know how to continue. I prefer to explain everything correctly. And we are threatening queen h6, playing for mate. Sorry, winning with checkmate. The only move that stops it here is h5, but I'm gonna let you think for 3 seconds about a wonderful move that ends up winning the game. Come on, let's see who finds it. You can pause the video. All of you who want to do the exercise are thinking. The best move here is the brilliant queen sacrifice. Very difficult to see, friends. Very difficult to see. Queen takes h5. Obviously, they have to take the queen because we're coming in with queen a checkmate. So, when the queen is captured, look at what a wonderful move, huh? Knight g5 and the checkmate on h7 is inevitable. The king can't move to any square. And not only that, but there's no way to give it an escape route either. So here, whatever the black pieces do, we would simply play bishop h7, checkmate, wonderful. Of course, we just studied that by playing d4, this more aggressive variation. If they captured our e4 pawn, we would come out winning. But the correct reaction for black is to capture the d4 pawn. Chess to chess, you can't leave without telling me how I should play if they make the correct reaction. Well, very well. Here we wouldn't recapture immediately. It wouldn't be a bad move, but I recommend a much better one, which is now knight f3. A much better move. Chess to chess, you're going crazy, and now you're leaving the other pawn here. Our opponent is up 2 pawns. Well, now we can recover one, right? So, technically, we are down 1 pawn. But in exchange for what? In exchange for tremendous activity. The queen is active, threatening the knight, so we have the initiative. This knight must move. It can't be defended with d5 because we would simply capture the pawn, so it must move. We have the bishop and the knight out, and we're going to castle on the next move. For example, if they play knight d6, which is the most popular response to threaten our bishop, we castle kingside. Situation, we have 2 pieces and the queen active, and we've castled. Our opponent has all their pieces on the 8th rank. They can't castle yet, and the knight is holding them back a bit. Black's best reaction seems to be knight takes c4, eliminating our bishop pair and a brutal bishop. However, we would already have the game won here. What do you think about that? We already have the game won. The correct move is not queen takes knight, which would still leave us with an advantage, but rather the correct move is rook e1, a very good intermediate move. We put the king in check. How can they stop this check with 2 moves? Well, they can give up the knight, but that would simply delay their doom by 1 more move, right? They can play queen d7, queen e7, giving up the queen, a monumental mistake, but bishop e7 is also a monumental mistake. Why? Because it stops defending the g7 square. Queen takes g7 to win the game. Remember well, for the moment we are down a piece. Down a piece. They've captured our knight. Even so, we are threatening the rook, and now here we finish it off with bishop h6. And as you can see, checkmate is inevitable. What do you mean inevitable, chess teacher, if it's well defended? No, because after queen takes f8, it's checkmate. You can't take with the king because the bishop is there, and you can't take with the bishop because it's pinned thanks to our rook on d1. Notice how strong the rook's pin is. The sharpest among you will have realized that by taking this pawn, instead of playing knight d6, they can play knight f6, right? Which is a very natural move, and they don't get blocked at all. Well, don't worry, because I'll show you a quick plan that will always work for you. Remember the ideas well, because you're going to manage to win many games this way. We come to pin this knight, with this bishop, right? We pin the queen. Very good. Our opponent can do anything. The most sensible move, without a doubt, is to play bishop e7, defending against this very strong pin. If not, we could start trading these pieces. Two doubled and isolated pawns on the f-file. That wouldn't be a good idea. And now we change plans. Knight c3, what for? Not to bring more pieces into the attack, which it also does, but to castle long, my friends. Very good idea. For example, things you should know about this opening. If they attack your queen, where should you place it? If they attack your queen, you should place it on h4. Why? Because it's extremely complicated to kick out. They can't kick it out from anywhere. Something they try to do to me a lot is h6, a move that is useless because they aren't threatening our bishop since the rook is undefended. Therefore, a better move here would be, for example, castling, right? Now they could play h6 afterwards, right? To castle long, placing the rook on the same file as the queen. Very good move. We are in a wonderful position, and from here on, we are making very strong threats. For example, bishop to d3. You don't need to memorize all of this. You just need to understand it so you can apply it in your own games. We are threatening checkmate with the queen and bishop. Simply, what we would have to do is bishop takes knight, eliminating this piece and delivering checkmate. This is the most obvious one of all. How can the black pieces try to save themselves from this situation? For example, by playing h6. Why? Because now, if we trade, what would happen? That they would no longer have queen takes h7 checkmate, since this pawn would be stopping it. So, how do we continue? Well, quite simply. This way, we can even sacrifice the bishop. Bishop takes h6, pawn takes h6, and queen takes h6. So that, now, one way or another, checkmate will be inevitable. It really doesn't matter to us at all what they do. We're simply going to move in with all our pieces. Are they pinning this knight? Makes no difference to me. I'm going to come in with the knight as well. And you won't have any way to stop this checkmate. Practical example. If they come to take our rook, the only thing we would simply have to do is come in with the bishop. If they take with the knight, checkmate with the queen. And if they move the king away, well, we could simply deliver checkmate in more than one way. But why complicate our lives if here, instead of coming in with the bishop, we should think about which piece is bothering us for the checkmate? The knight, well, I'm coming to eliminate it. If you capture it, I'm going to checkmate you, and that's it. This knight can't move away, and if it does anything else, it really doesn't matter to us. So we will capture the knight, and when they capture back, now we can finally go in for the checkmate. In this case, we would play queen h7, checkmate, king f8, and queen takes f7, checkmate. I hope you loved this video. If you loved my way of explaining and all the concepts I've taught you, I would really appreciate it if you left a big like, which costs you absolutely nothing and makes me very happy. If you like this board with coordinates, I'll bring more explanatory videos with this board, since I love recording this type of video, if you'll pardon the redundancy. Also, today I recorded sitting right here at the table, so I got much less tired than usual. I was able to explain things with much more clarity. I hope you love this video, friends, and we'll see each other tomorrow, as always, with another new video. Bye.